Why is this movie so green? Like literally, is it the white green of our flag? Is it the lush forests of Sambisa or whatever forest these people were in this movie? Or is it the green of our army uniform? Why? Why this movie is so green? And guys, yes, I am back. I needed a break. I got my break and now I'm back. So
let's do it.
Welcome to this review of yet another movie flying under the First Features flag. This one is an action drama, I would add psychological, and it's titled At Ease. At Ease is streaming on Prime Video and it's written by Dadet and directed by Seun Richards. It stars Asa'ah and Anee Icha. For its synopsis, it says an exceptional soldier and leader, Major Agbo, leads his special forces team on a mission to successfully rescue hostages from insurgents. However, as the only member of his team to survive the operation, he must now fight his way back through injury and survivor's guilt to find himself again for the sake of his young family. All right, my only comment on the synopsis is that it gives a bit too much away. I would much rather not have known that he was the only survivor of that encounter, but it's a small thing. Now, let's just do a brief rundown. I don't know why I'm so excited. I'm excited to be back, guys. Let's do a brief rundown. Now, as we've seen from the synopsis, Major Ifeanyi Agbo, played by Asa'ah, I hope I said that right, and his team, they go on a mission and he alone survives. Back home, he undergoes a long journey of first physical recovery, after which he's faced with sort of the prospect of the mental and psychological recovery. This latter bit proves a lot more difficult as he experiences the classic, if cliche, symptoms of PTSD. He refuses therapy, much to the frustration of his wife, Lara, played by Anee Icha. The situation is exacerbated by his being mandatorily retired. At some point, he begins to get better, but then a visit from the wife of one of his fallen comrades throws him completely off course and he has to sort of begin all over again. So of course, the home front fares no better as he becomes almost completely incapable of being any kind of husband to his wife or father to his son. Eventually, he attacks his son and then his wife is left with no choice other than to pack up and leave with the child. This movie attempts to sketch a picture of what I guess post-war PTSD can look like, and this story is important in the way that it touches on first the insurgency in the north, and then equally important is the way that it humanizes the military, specifically our military, and highlights the sacrifice of the people who serve, because normally, let's face it, in Nigeria we only think about the military in the context of brutality, and often rightly so. Now, this movie also highlights the plight of, people, what they go through in a marriage when faced with what I would consider impossible choices. This movie really makes the point that there's really no good choice here for the wife, Lara. Another important feature is the discourse here around mental health, the toll it takes on one's self, and then of course the people around them, the dichotomy, for the people in the lives of the sufferer, choosing, between empathy for the sufferer and taking care of their own self and interest. And then for the sufferer, it raises the question of whether or not getting better is within or outside their control. So please, with that in mind, stick around as we discuss At Ease. Guys, you know the drill. If you're a first or second time caller, please consider subscribing. And if you're a returning visitor, we already have a relationship, so let's make it official. Please don't make me your friends with benefits, okay? Don't forget to like this video. In fact, now is a good time. Let's segue right into it and talk performances. Asa'ah, he plays the character of Ifeanyi. He's a competent actor. I quite like him. I've mostly seen him in TV series, so it's good to see him in a starring role. I'm sure that he's got others, but I haven't really experienced him in a starring role in a movie. So this is a good role for him. He does the job well enough. I think just looking at him, watching him, this feels within the wheelhouse of his talent and expressions, right? So while the character Ifeanyi goes through a range of psychological events, I don't think that these are reflected enough in the script to be especially challenging for the actor. And then let's get to Anee Icha, who plays Lara. That's his wife. She's a competent actor as well. This is a complicated role of a woman caught in an impossible situation, the cross wires of love and her duty to her marriage, and the real helplessness of navigating what seems like an an impossible situation on the psychological terrain in the hellscape of just another person's mind. It's a losing battle, right? So she's quite good here. I much preferred her in Casa de Novia, something. I mean, she does a good enough job, like I've said, but there are a few times when she drops her guard, or I should say she kind of loses control of her expression, and then the result is sort of unwitting miscommunication, right? Where I feel like what is being communicated is by her body language is not really what is intended for that character in that scene. Like, look at this scene, for instance. Her body language here is like one big eye roll, right? And it just feels inappropriate to this particular situation. There are also some instances of exaggeration in the acting, but then again, this is a complicated role. That, however, does not suggest that the character in itself is complicated. And let that usher us directly into character development. I think that these characters could have been better fleshed out. Let's start there. I don't know what Lara knows of being the wife of a soldier, and I don't know anything about her apart from that she's the wife of a man experiencing PTSD. I don't know what she does, how she thinks. I only know what she projects, right? Her character could have been more sympathetic. It does become so later in the film towards the end, but in the beginning, it's just kind of hard to relate with what she's going through just because of the personality of that character, I suppose. And I guess you could also lend a bit of that to the acting. Looking at this blow up, for instance.
God answered my prayers, that's it. So now, Major Ifeanyi Agbo, you go ahead and feel whatever it is you need to feel, but don't you dare think that you can put this on me.
Like this scene.
I am your wife. I am the mother of your son, and you will treat me with the respect I deserve.
This scene made me feel like I'm supposed to dislike this character. Now, I don't also know much about Ifeanyi beyond his being caught in the throes of, a mental health, whatever crisis, and that he loves his family, but that he's at war with his mind. But, all of these things make sense, but then it's almost written as though everyone would react or respond to the circumstances in the same way, which isn't true at all. And so it then feels like he is intentionally made like a blank canvas. The character is written like a blank canvas so that anything can be sort of painted on, and that will take us further down to the conversation about cliches. But what are his beliefs, his core beliefs? What are his principles? What are his relationships outside of the people we see? What was his relationship with his men beyond our assumption, that maybe they were friends or something? So there's not really much that we know about this character outside of whatever we are shown, and that's not much. We can't get into his internal mindscape. All right, as far as the kid Nnamdi, I like the way he's used as a narrative plot device, especially in the turning point in the third act. Now, I didn't mention the actor, the boy, in the performance discussion. I was talking about the main performances. I think he's very much critical. However, I didn't mention him because for the life of me, I couldn't find any information on the kid, So that said, this kid is hilarious. It seems like the director gave this boy 2 notes: smile and make very firm, very strong eye contact, because Jesus, at some point the boy just, I was almost scared of this kid, weird little kid, bless his little heart. But okay, I think he'll do very well. This is a good place to start. I'm not persuaded about, and we're getting straight into the story now, I'm not persuaded about Ifeanyi having survived that blast. It was written in such a way that makes it almost not believable. I feel like they should have taken him out of the range of the blast just on a pretext. And they had one, they were looking for somebody called Belerebe.
The intel said that Balerebe is supposed to be here.
What if they had just simply said, I'm going to go look for him or whatever, and then he's taken out of range? That would make more sense. And so this tracks to my very next point, which is that his injuries are completely inconsistent with the kind of incident that occurred. He was in the center of a bomb blast, and he ends up looking like he was just in a car accident or something like that. It's just not compatible, I'm sorry. I think that the hospital episode just takes up too much screen time. It's not germane to the story that this movie is telling, and so you could have taken that whole bit out and it really changes nothing. So that was kind of like a big waste of time. Now, while the subject of PTSD is really important, I just have a general sense that I'm watching a bunch of cliches about post-war PTSD. other than the insurgency beat, which is very Nigerian, I feel like we've seen this movie 1,000 times before. I saw, for instance, the relapse into drunkenness from A Million Miles Away. His mother-in-law mentions him attacking his family.
What happens to you and your son when he decides that you are now his new enemies?
And then was it not the very next scene? Almost immediately, he does. And if I tell you I laughed, it was like watching a sleeper agent receiving the activation code and suddenly it's crazy, So that was just like, I don't know, very heavy-handed, overt foreshadowing. I'll leave that there. And by the way, can I suggest that the PTSD story would have been stronger if the deaths of the men had resulted from a decision and or miscalculation that he had made in his role as their commander, right? Because he was the one leading this mission. I'm not saying that survivor's guilt is not a thing. It's real, it's important, it's valid. However, if it had gone beyond survivor's guilt to a real sense of responsibility, I think that it could have heightened the drama and the narrative. Now, some scenes needed to be justified. For instance, they go to a church, right? Do you know what I would have liked to see when they were in the church? I would have liked to see them in church during an actual sermon and see him reacting to, what would you expect? A preaching about like a message of love and the mercies of God or whatever, and then watching him mentally basically calling BS, because right at this point, he has to be at war with whatever it is that he believes, right? Otherwise, why take us to the church if it's not to make a point around what he's going through? So yeah, that seemed like also a missed opportunity. And then I don't understand why he wants to return to active duty when literally his nightmares are about guns going off. So maybe, talk to me in the comments and let me know, maybe that makes sense, but that doesn't really track for me. But then what do I know? I'm not a psychologist, so it's not as much a criticism as it's an observation. Now, he's being forced into retirement. That's just contrived drama. It would have made more sense if he was offered a desk job or something and then he refused because like, I'm a soldier, I have to be, yeah, but he's not offered anything. He's only in his like mid-30s, and next thing he just has injuries that are very, very recoverable from, but next thing they're telling him you're basically summarily retired or whatever. So I just feel like that was just created to move the plot forward. And then in the context of being offered the medal, him saying, that's all I get, a medal.
A medal? That's all I get, a medal?
It's incongruous with is it incongruous or incongruent? I always never know which one it is, but it's incongruent with his feelings of guilt, right? Because when you say that's all I get, that means you're not getting enough, right? And a more appropriate sentiment, I think, would be if he had said something like, why do I get a medal? He's dealing with survivor's guilt. That's what we're told, right? So it's not, this is all I get. It's rather, why should I even get anything at all? I basically led these men to their deaths. So guys, to wrap up, I'm going to say that this movie could have been shorter. With a runtime of 123 minutes, it's longer than it needs to be. I know what I'm supposed to feel, but I don't feel. I really don't. This movie is just such an emotional flatline for me. And tell me what you think and how you experienced this movie. There's such value in restraint in writing emotions that I guess we're really yet to realize. Because from the very first scene, the wife is already sad, so there's not much further that you can go from there emotionally. Do you know what I mean? And then after that, it just becomes unrelenting. Even his psychological episodes are so unrelenting. It's real, but honestly, in the context of a movie, it makes watching quite a chore. I like what this movie attempts, but it does drag, and ultimately, I think it falls a bit flat. This is by no means a bad film. I'm not saying that it is. This movie does show, like I've already said, the complicatedness of a situation such as these couples. And as far as the resolution, while I like the idea of a support group, over conventional talk therapy or what, this is still talk therapy, but over conventional one-on-one therapy, because because one of the things that he said early was that nobody understands this. So I see the value of like having that kind of whatever with people who have experienced the same thing, you know. But I think that they could have shown us a bit more what that process looked like, considering that all of what had happened so far was leading up to this. It just seemed like, let's just wrap this up really quickly. So we've gone through all of these 2 hours, and then in the last remaining 3 minutes is when they just quickly wrap it up. We don't know how exactly this translates to helpfulness, you know, to him and people like that. So I don't know. That time in the hospital, I've already said, it would have been better invested in seeing his return and attempts to reintegrate into society. It just feels like once he came back, and I'll just leave that there. I'm trying to really shorten my video. So you're going to see also kind of like that change. So I do recommend this movie for specifically the importance of the subject matter, and also for a worthwhile attempt at psychological drama. It doesn't quite nail it for me. I don't think it doesn't really show me anything new, except like I had already said, it humanizes sort of the military in a way that I guess we don't often think of the sacrifices that they make because their drama is too much, right? Okay, guys, thank you so much. That's it for At Ease. So now you can stand at ease. Remember to like, comment, share, subscribe, and all the things. I appreciate you guys so much. And what do I tell you? What have I come back to remind you of? That you have the right to an incredible viewing experience. So never settle. Thank you.